Welcome to WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast series by PharmaVOICE. This episode was made possible by a generous sponsorship by Purohit Navigation. For more information, visit purohitnavigation.com. In this episode, Taryn Grome, editor-in-chief of PharmaVOICE magazine, meets with Ahnal Purohit, Ph.D., founder and CEO, Purohit Navigation.
Ahnal, welcome to the PharmaVOICE WOW podcast program.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I want to congratulate you again on being recognized as a PharmaVOICE Red Jacket honoree this year. And for those of you all who are listening to this podcast who don't know what that award entails, Ahnal was recognized for her long list of leadership achievements and inspirational qualities, as well as for her decades-long pursuit of breaking barriers across the industry. Truly an inspiration to so many people, and I couldn't be prouder to have recognized you this year. So let's start with talking about some of your career highlights and your journey. Let's start with your current position as CEO of Purohit Navigation. You are redefining how traditional advertising agencies fit into the healthcare ecosystem. Talk to me about that evolution and why this is important, and then as a follow-up on that, how the company interacts with clients.
A really important and good question, Taryn. First of all, I believe that we all agree that healthcare ecosystem is changing and will continue to change. And as the ecosystem changes, how can we be comfortable in thinking of marketing and advertising in a traditional way? I don't think that it is going to survive. And so even for our survival, we must rethink and redefine to be relevant. And I believe that most of the clients also agree that the ecosystem is changing. So when we have our conversations with the clients, it's not about whether the system is changing or not. It's about where is it changing, how is it changing, and how fast is it changing. And therefore, the communication that we have with our clients really relate back to what kinds of novel solutions we can bring to the table and how we can uncover opportunities specific to their challenges. So some examples would be that when we communicate with our clients, we talk about what we have done to adapt the changing ecosystem and what we can do for them. And sometimes we even start about why we renamed our company a few years ago and have Purohit Navigation, the word navigation, included. We talk about that we are not an advertising or communications agency, but our role now is to navigate a brand, a franchise, or company to its fullest potential. Traditional advertising in a journal, I don't think is going to work as well all of the time. There are time and places and products where it's appropriate, but for some of them it may not be. Even banner ads may not be. So we have to think outside of the box and look at the continuum and see what is it that is going to be more relevant. And that's why we believe that important thing that we can bring to the table is navigating either a brand or a franchise or a company. We tell our clients that our job is to help you uncover opportunities. For example, these opportunities in rare diseases may be uncovered not in the traditional decision-making pain points on a patient journey or by analyzing big data. The opportunity may lie in another dimension of decision-making. The opportunity space cannot be one-dimensional that we typically have. The algorithms and decision-making that we talk about must be examined and studied in a multidimensional space, often considering small data. That makes it even more difficult because on one hand we are talking about multivariate analysis and multidimensionality, and on the other hand we are talking about small data in rare diseases because frankly big data are not even available. If a company is in an early stage of commercialization, how our strategic approaches challenges that status quo, and how we bring in outside of the box thinking based on the client and who we are talking to. And finally, we talk about the fact that we do not really have a cookie-cutter approach. We believe that each brand has a unique opportunity, and we must think beyond for our client, and that's the message that we give to our clients. We learn from our experiences from the past. However, we do not replicate strategies and tactics just because they were successful somewhere else. We definitely look at the learnings from it, and if there is any application, but it should not be just automatically applied because we did it somewhere else. And we start with a blank piece of paper. We develop individualized strategies that relate back to the identified opportunities, and the tactics and recommendations are based on leveraging those opportunities. Bottom line is, Taryn, that we have to increase the comfort level of our clients in thinking approach that we have, and by showing successes of our approach and work, if that makes sense to you.
Absolutely. There's a lot to unpack in there, and I just want to touch on a piece of that, and that's about small data. Yeah. And, I think that we in the industry have been talking about big data for so long that we've forgotten about those small data pieces. Can you talk a little bit more about why you think this is going to be a sustainable trend?
I think that, we all go through this trends, right? It's like one after another, but we have to go back to the basics and, even defining big data. And, it's kind of interesting. There was a book on small data, and what we talk about, what the book also talks about there is more about you learn about big data and trends and some of the aspects of the human behavior. But when you want to really understand the depth of it, we have to do more investigating and go deeper into it that big data may not be able to provide and cannot provide. Also on top of it, I believe, and this is my opinion, that in rare diseases where the number of patients are very, very limited and the specialty physicians that treat those diseases or conditions are very limited, small data is where we need to go to understand hows and whys of what is happening. Big data, I do not think that can provide it. Big data may be able to provide us in terms of how many patients are there, or through artificial intelligence, algorithms, etc. But when it comes to the hows and the whys and multidimensional patient journey, I don't think we will be able to get that information.
That's another big point that you just brought up, is about the rare disease patients. And with 7,000, rare diseases still unmet need, and, physicians are taught to look for, when they hear, footsteps, are taught to identify horses, not zebras, right? But with small data, it could potentially identify some of these rare diseases much earlier, which is a huge issue for that patient population.
Absolutely. One stat that I read somewhere, and I don't remember exactly where, was that on an average it takes about 7 years to diagnose a rare disease. And quite often, when the patient understands and is given the diagnosis, even though the diagnosis may be chronic and not that great, they are happy because now they know that it's not their mental status or state that kind of made them complain about, what they were going through, but that they really have a condition and that is rare, but now that they feel relieved that they're diagnosed.
Absolutely. I've heard that from multiple rare disease patients, that it's just nice to have an answer.
Yes. Right, and then they will manage it, or they will, they'll go on from it. But at least just to have that answer is extremely important for them.
Absolutely. So along your career, you've broken a lot of barriers. You were instrumental in some really early breakthroughs in terms of clients and identifying different strategies for brand positioning. Can you talk about one of your earlier successes that you look back now and go, oh my gosh, it was such a breakthrough and now it's become standard almost? I know there are a couple that you have.
Yeah, so one of the earliest ones that I remember is patient starter kit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about this at least about 34 years ago, which is a long, long time ago, right? My goodness, like most of the people were not even born then that are in this industry. But anyways, we were working in dermatology area, specifically in rosacea. And at that time, rosacea was considered, actually, Metrogel, when it was approved as an orphan drug. It just so happened that later on, in terms of the development and understanding, people realized that there are many, many more patients than what was recognized at that time, even by FDA, in terms of how many patients have rosacea. But anyways, one of the things that we wanted to do was really start developing database for patients who were diagnosed with rosacea. And at that time, there was no data, no information available for these patients, what their life journey was like, except for some of the market research that we had done. But we wanted to do kind of expand and also communicate with these patients what they were going through and just kind of develop the track. It was kind of interesting. One of the things that our client at that time also complained was that when you give the topical products in tubes, that the physicians had a tendency at that time to give like many, many tubes. Rather than making it a trial tube, they would give instead of one, they may give like 10 of them to a patient, so that one patient may get 10 tubes and the other one may not get any. And that was pretty much the standard, and everyone would talk about. And one of the things when we start looking at it and in terms of insight, we said that, look, we don't have information about these patients. We don't have any opt-ins. We don't know who they are. So that's number one. We know that there is a challenge in terms of physicians kind of giving like a lot of sample tubes to one patient and not any to another. We know that physicians, even at that time, even though they talked about communicating and educating patients about a condition of rosacea, but frankly, it was very different, or patients would forget. As you know, most of the patients forget what they were told in the physician's office, as soon as they get out of the office, right? We came up with a patient starter kit. So that one little kit had 2 tubes, educational materials, what rosacea was, how to use the product, and also an opt-in so that we could start developing patient database. And that was done about 34 years ago.
That's excellent. So way ahead of the curve there.
Now, if you talk to anybody, right, would anyone have a product that wouldn't talk about a starter kit kind of thing or some kind of a patient kit,
No.
When the patient is diagnosed? I mean, everybody talks about it. But at that time, go back to the history, you'll see that you wouldn't find much.
That's amazing. Let's talk about those early days of the agency or the company now. You were one of the first women to own a healthcare advertising agency. What were those days like, and how did those experiences help shape your career and leadership philosophy?
When we started the company, and before that I was at another agency for 2-3 years, but anyways, at that time, it was a men's world then, no denying about it. But initially the barrier, Taryn, was not only that I was a woman, but that a woman of Indian origin, an Indian immigrant woman of color. Many men at that time were really not necessarily against not working with me, but it was, frankly, they didn't know what to do with me. Like you enter an office and they would look at me and they didn't know how to greet me, how to talk to me, whatever. I think that they were, it was almost like the fear of unknown. What I felt that partly it was really my responsibility to make them comfortable. They needed to feel comfortable and in my, not only in my capabilities, but also overall. I had to kind of convince them in a way that I may look different, I talk differently, and I represent a group that they may not know. But at the end of the day, my thinking is similar to what they want, and that I'm approachable. And one way that I did that was I listened, I learned, and I tried to understand their fears. I empathized with them, and I provided strategic solutions that included outside-of-the-box thinking. And I figured that most want to be associated with individuals who somehow help them succeed in their jobs and their careers. And so I thought that, hey, you know what? If I can help them to be successful, success will also come to me. So I really kept it all about work and not about me at all. And I think that helped. But of course, Taryn, frankly, there were many men at that time and some leaders in pharma companies that felt that I did not belong in this industry. They were vocal then, and actually some of the things that they said, if they said right now, would be considered abhorrent, to say the least. I remember an executive of one pharma company telling my partner at Danaher not to bring me to any of the meetings because of my Indian origin. And this pharma company, it's a very large company even now. They at that time had a policy to not include any doctors of Indian origin in primary market research. Can you believe that?
It's amazing,
right?
Yeah.
But however, what, Taryn, there were many men and company executives that were very supportive of me. I think that they saw that I was trying and that I wanted to be successful and I had something to offer. And they really appreciated that and helped me. And what this taught me is that there are enough good people out there in our industry and that I should concentrate on them and appreciate the opportunities that they were giving to me and be positive. And even now, I always tell my staff that appreciate all of our clients that give us business. They believe in us and they trust in us. That is why they give us business, right? So
right.
We need to do the best for them. And if at all, we should complain about all those people who do not give us business. So just go out and complain about them, I say. Don't complain about our clients at all. It's not acceptable.
That's a great philosophy.
Yeah, so your second part is really an important one in terms of how did that shape my career and leadership. So if you think in terms of my career, I guess I'm very competitive by nature. And so when those who discriminate really motivate me, they give me even more energy because I want to prove them wrong. I want to show them even more the excellence of our work and our service and excellence of my team and how we help our clients succeed. I want to show those naysayers that we are talented, hardworking people who can make a difference. And I want to show them that hard work and talent are equally distributed by gender, by race, by age, etc. And because of these things, at Purohit Navigation, we hire only based on talent. We don't see anything else. And one of the things that I'm really, really proud of for my team and my company is that one of the proudest moments for me was the fact that this year our company was recognized as most diverse in our industry.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I know what it feels like to be discriminated against, and I don't want anyone to feel this way. So my thing
what a wonderful what a great achievement.
Yeah, but I think that maybe partly it is because of who I am, right? Because when you have gone through some things, you don't want anyone to go through it because you know that, regardless of background of any which way that you look at it. If people are talented, they're talented. It doesn't really matter. It's not my decision to judge anybody outside of the work that they do.
Perfect.
So we just focus on that.
That's great. You talk about the diversity of your organization. I also know that, it's a woman-owned business, yeah. And so mentoring is very important to you.
Yeah,
so
by the way, women and minority-owned business, so we have certification for both.
Yes, sorry about that. And so talk about your philosophy about mentoring that next generation of leaders, and what does that mean to the other senior executives in your company?
So I believe, Karen, that mentoring is extremely important at all levels and for all individuals. I think about myself and I wonder what would have happened to me if I did not have good mentors, for example. And mentoring should exist in all companies regardless of whether they are women-owned, minority-owned, or whatever, because I believe that actually as a leader of the company, I believe that my primary role or one of my primary roles within the organization is to mentor the next generation of leaders. And I start from Anshul, and of course, Anshul is my daughter and who is the president now of the company, and of course my two other core members, Monica and Kim. And I'm certain that by mentoring them, they will do well, and they in turn will mentor another generation of navigators, the third generation of navigators in our firm. And as a matter of fact, I'm so proud that I'm already seeing the third generation mentoring by my core, and it's just the best feeling that you can have. And, at the end of the day, I think for any leaders, and specifically at least I feel for mine, that part of my leadership and my legacy must be judged by how I built and mentored the next generation of leaders in my firm, because that's important.
Yes, it is important. And so, again, congratulations to you. And I know that your staff, you have really developed a loyal cadre of employees. Much of that is due to your leadership style and personality. So when you hear those kinds of things, that people stay a long time, what does that mean to you as a leader? And it's because of you. How does that make you feel?
I'm grateful that people say that it's because of you. But, nothing works one way. It's always two ways, right? Everybody gives in a relationship, whether it is personal or in business. So I am really grateful that even my direct reports may say that it's because of me, but I think it's also as much because of them and what they believe in. At the end of the day, it comes to like-minded people, I believe, and I am very lucky that all of my direct reports, not a lot, all of my direct reports think the way I do, and we are really similar, like-minded people. So partly it is because of who they are, how they came into the organization and our company, and how we are growing together. I mentor them, but frankly, they mentor me as much as I mentor them.
So let's talk a little bit, too, about what's on the horizon. We've talked about some trends that you identified, small data, looking at the rare disease population. But what else does the company see on the horizon in terms of trends or factors that you think are going to impact the life sciences in the next couple of years? What do you have your finger on?
Yeah, so there are many, right? I mean, it's so much happening we can talk about the disruptive companies coming along to AI, the list really goes on. But then let's kind of start narrowing down in terms of where can we make the impact, right? And we feel that we can make a lot of impact in terms of communication, strategies to communications, etc., more in certain parts of that ecosystem and chain. And we think that we can make a lot of impact in rare diseases, given our thinking in the small data that we talked about. And for rare diseases, it is even more important that we don't have a cookie-cutter approach because it's not going to work. And I think that's our expertise. So if you look at it, I think that we are going to go more in that direction. The other one, I believe, that is going to impact where we are going and where we'll end up going, is also based on smaller pharma and biotech companies arising. They have different needs. They have fantastic technology sometimes. Sometimes they want to sell one, see one, and do one kind of an approach. But when they want to start working closer and closer to introducing brands themselves, or even when they sell, sometimes they want to say that how can they maximize the value of that company. I think that we can come in very handy and kind of help them, those smaller companies, in developing their highest potential. Given our background and what we have done. So in terms of, there's so many different trends, but when you start looking at it, we are, I feel that you and I have talked about it, many years ago in terms of how we went into diagnostics, because that was really important for us to understand where the pharma was going and what was happening in terms of that part of technology and pairing diagnostics to treatment. We will definitely continue in that regard, and it's going to be even more at a micro level because of the rare diseases, but we will definitely continue. We'll continue more in terms of the rare diseases, but I think there is a whole big new approach that's going to come or that is going to be needed for these smaller biotech companies, small to mid-size, and they are going to need help. Their infrastructure is different, and they have sometimes a lot to lose on an individual basis than a large pharma, large organization with this huge elephant weight approach. Yeah.
Right. Somebody likened it to being like the house is on fire all the time. You're constantly having to put out fires because you need to keep the house strong. So, because when you only have one drug or one technology, everything's riding on it.
Yes. Yeah, you're so right, and that's why, and it's kind of also interesting because I put them kind of in two buckets. One is that a lot of them have fantastic science. They're very science-oriented, right? But they've not gone to marketing yet. So they're kind of more science-oriented, and they need that commercialization expertise, not necessarily communications and commercialization expertise and identifying opportunities, which is very different than a large pharma would have. And it's really, again, important because the house is always on fire in terms of, how do you identify and what you identify. And they're very, very open, and they are quick decision makers in a way because they have to survive. And we do really well in those kinds of situations, I think.
Excellent. So finally, with a lifetime of accomplishments and accolades, talk to me about a wow moment in your career that shaped where you are today.
So many things that have shaped me that I don't even know where I can begin. But when I think about it, I'm going to give you an example of one that I think that really made an impact for me. So when I started in this industry, I was learning and was not confident at all in terms of my capability in what I was doing. I was in academia. What do I know about business kind of thing, right? And I was actually even questioning myself if I had made the right choice to leave my secure tenured position, right? I was secure, I was tenured, I was doing my thing, I was publishing a lot. In that world, I was known. Here I am, not known at all, and had no clue what the heck I was doing in the beginning. I knew what I was doing, but not in terms of everything that I was exposed to, right? So at one point, I remember I was asked to attend a strategy meeting along with the senior agency management. This was just I started working 1 year later or something like that. And the meeting was at an office of a president of one of the large pharma companies. Okay, and it was a strategy meeting. And I think, frankly, the agency was small at that time, so maybe they just didn't have enough warm bodies to take with them to fill the room, when the president was there. So maybe that's why they kind of took me along. I don't know why they took me. But anyways, when they invited me, and when I went, I was asked to listen during the meeting and take notes, and was asked to speak and contribute only if I was asked. They said that keep your mouth shut, just listen, take notes, look intelligent, but you don't have to say anything unless we specifically ask you. And so I said, oh, okay. But what happened was that during the meeting, there was a question regarding suggested strategy based on some minimal data that was available at that time. And somewhere along the line, because it was data, I was asked to provide my opinion of what I thought. And based on what had gone, what I listened during the meeting, I provided some insight. And the president listened to the insight and liked my approach. And overall, he nodded in agreement, kind of saying that, that kind of makes sense. And then the meeting was done. We came back to our office, and nothing happened after that. About a month later, there was a follow-up meeting. And the president of the company, asked the senior manager to bring that Indian girl, he said. Bring that Indian girl with you, because he was pleased with the contribution that I had made. But he didn't know who I was or what my name was, Yeah, so, and this is really it's funny now, but it's so true. And but this incident really did boost my confidence, and I said, for the first time I felt like, wow, I can do this, I can be good at this, and my career got a significant boost, because after that, all the senior management people in this agency started taking me to all of the client meetings, right? Because they saw that one works, so why not take her along for some other things, kind of thing. But the real moment for me came a few years later, when that president became our partner in another venture.
Yeah, that is a wow. That's amazing. Right, how one meeting could change everything for you.
Everything, right? Yeah, he just kind of said that.
Thank you for listening to this episode of WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast series.
Can you imagine that?
And thanks again to Purohit Navigation for sponsoring this episode. For more information, visit PurohitNavigation.com. We also encourage you to listen to additional episodes at PharmaVOICE.com/wow.
Yeah.
This 2019 program is copyrighted by PharmaLinks, LLC.
Out loud would say, bring that Indian girl,
No. Well, let's hope not.
So much off there. But he was really open, and like I said, that he became our partner in one of the ventures, because it's just that was the way he talked, but there was nothing negative in his head. You know what I mean? And I
get it.
That sometimes we become very sensitive to some things that people say when they don't even mean it. So, we have to kind of be sensitive to why people say what they say and how they say it, rather than just kind of put them all in a bucket and kind of say that, isn't that bad? That's what I
agree. Oh, I agree. I think that's a very good perspective on it. So, well, as always, Ahnal, I have so enjoyed speaking with you, and thank you for being part of our WOW podcast program.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me.